Hey, welcome back. This week, I want to take you guys along for a week in my life as a photographer, especially as a photographer who just started his own photography business. And these videos are meant to show you guys what I do in a week, how I plan my time, and also to take you along with the lessons I learn throughout these weeks. And I think this is a good way to combine some of the content I shoot into one video and to kind of show you how I develop myself and how I develop my business. So I hope you enjoy a week of photography. So during spring and early summer, the weather in the Netherlands has been pretty horrible. I could spend my time shooting, but I thought my time was better spent preparing for the better days. So that is what I did. I tried to prepare some shoots for when there would be maybe a little bit of good light, so that I would at least have a plan. So I have now lived in Utrecht for, almost 3 years, but I've never really analyzed the city or really looked at the city from a photography perspective. I was working full-time, maybe even more than full-time, and I was way too occupied with that to actually take it in. I was way too busy with just getting from point A to point B and not really looking at what was around me. So I thought it was a good moment to sit down, slow down, and actually try to look at what this city has to offer. So on Monday, I decided to focus myself on location scouting. And first I did this by, grabbing a coffee in the city center and just walking a little bit from there. And then when the weather got a little bit worse, I decided to do it from home. And the main tool I use is very simple. It's Google Maps, both for planning or just finding locations in general. And because it has some very useful features. You have these pins that show points of interest, restaurants, cafes, but also historical buildings. And when you're in nature, it shows things like waterfalls, national parks, etc., viewpoints. So it's all very useful. The other nice thing about Google is that you also have the Google Maps with the street view, where you can actually look at the location from the street's perspective, which is really useful because it shows you how you could frame your shot. But another small tip I could give you is to also look around, because it can really help you to look for the buildings that are around the location you want to shoot at. For example, if there are some really, really tall flats, you can imagine that, golden hour would probably not work because all the light would be blocked. And that's something that's very useful to take into account when planning to shoot a location for the first time, especially if you have no time to go there beforehand, before the actual shoot. So at this point in time, I was not using Street View, but I was just looking top down with the Google Maps, but I didn't turn it to the regular maps, but I turned on the satellite picture feature, where you can actually see the colors and the type of buildings that are in a certain location. And when doing so, I spotted this green blob amongst all these buildings. Kind of sparked my interest. And then I found out it was the Old Hortus. It's this botanical garden that belongs to the University of Utrecht, and you can enter for a pretty small fee. So I thought this had some really good potential. It has these nice greenhouses and a lot of unique plants, and I thought it could make for some interesting shadow play when the sun would eventually peek through. So when I have more time to prepare, and in this case it was still raining, I try to look for inspiration for the actual pictures that I can take in this location. And I do that by either looking for pictures that have been taken at this specific location, or I look for pictures of things that are potentially there. For this garden, I knew there would be a lot of green there. I knew that there would be a lot of plants, but what I also knew is that there is this greenhouse, and that really got my interest. So I looked online for a lot of pictures of greenhouses, the way they framed it, the way they used it, and I used it as an inspiration. And what struck me most was the combination of light hitting the greenhouses and playing with all the textures and all the different colors that are there. So the next day, the weather was still a little bit meh. It was very cloudy, but there was a chance of the sun actually getting through. So I decided to just go for it and see what it would bring me. I had no clear plan in mind in terms of a goal that I wanted to reach. I was not shooting for my portfolio or for an assignment. So I decided to choose a little bit of a low-key setup. When I did, I decided to bring my main camera, a Sony a7R IV, but I did opt against bringing a lot of lenses, my whole gear, etc., because I just want to be there low-key and just know what I could find there. So I just attached one lens, which is the Sony Pancake lens, a 50mm one, which brings us to the pictures, and I'll see you on the other side. So the rest of the week was spent on editing and organizing, which is not that interesting, so let's just skip over it. It takes a lot of time, it's necessary, but it's not the most fun thing to do. So besides editing and organizing, I also finished a book I was reading. It's called Storyworthy by Matthew Dix. And it's actually a really nice book on storytelling, and I want to use it in the future because I'm thinking about making a documentary and turning on your storytelling brain and thinking a bit more about the way you approach things, the way you tell a story, what you put in and what you leave out. So I can definitely highly recommend it. The last thing I did during these, off days, the days that I didn't shoot, was learn more about shooting analog pictures. But I will leave my journey into the analog photography and shooting film for a whole different series of videos that will come in the future. So towards the end of the week, and maybe for the first time in a month, the clouds cleared up just before sunset. I think I had 45 minutes left until total darkness, but I didn't want to let this opportunity go to waste. I didn't have anything prepared, but I just decided to jump on my bike and head east. And some of you will immediately recognize my mistake in doing so. Because in the Netherlands, the sun sets in the west. And when you live in a city, like Utrecht, there are skyscrapers, high buildings. The Netherlands is very flat, but the buildings are not. So when you want to make the most of the limited time that you have during sunset, you have to go to the west part of the city. But I still managed to get maybe like 25 to 30 minutes of sunlight. But it did make me relearn a valuable lesson that I already knew, but I just simply forgot in the moment itself. And I brought you guys along for this little tiny photography trip. So one of the first places that I spotted was this strawberry and cherry farm just outside of Utrecht. And I knew it was there because I passed by it when I run. But I thought it looked really nice, but unfortunately it's always closed during sunset. But I do think you get this really cool atmosphere that you don't see a lot in the Netherlands. Quite like this shot where this is like the main point where they sell the juices and sell the berries and other fresh fruits. And the light hits this building pretty well, but the darkness is pretty nice on the front because the shop is closed. So I think that worked out pretty cool. So then after I visited the farm and the light there was gone, I continued my way east and a little bit more away from the city and away from the trees in the hope that I would find some more direct sunlight on buildings or cars or anything and that I would find interesting. So I tried to find some houses that were either hit really nicely by the sunlight or completely in the shadows, but then around them I could find a lot of nice light kind of framing and them in the shadow. I think I got a pretty nice mixture of pictures. For example, this one where you can really see the leaves kind of making a drawing on the side of the building and the yellow-orange bricks get a really nice warm color. This one is a little bit different. Most of the sun totally misses the building, but because it's white, it's still quite visible in the picture. And I like the way the golden light kind of spins around the bottom part of the picture and frames the house that way. So I showed a few variations of that picture and I'll show you some of them. Then when the sun was really getting low, I spotted this house. It's mostly covered in shadow, but there's still this like little yellow spot on the side of the building. And I think it gives a lot of depth to the picture, which I quite like. And I also spotted these horses, which were nicely side-lit by the sun. The bushes around them turned a really nice, warm, orange-yellow color. And in their skin, somehow it was a little bit more subtle. And in the skin, fur probably, I don't know. But their fur got a really more subtle color, very warm, but not as yellow, which I quite liked. And then towards the end, I decided to head more towards the forest because I was losing light anyway, in the hope that I would find a scene where it was mostly dark, but maybe a little bit of the last sunshine would get through. And that's where I shot this picture. I quite like it because the darkness in the front really emphasizes that, well, it's this one final light before it actually hits darkness, or at least the sun will go away. I also think that the line of trees on the right side of the frame gives some nice depth and leads you towards the building, especially because that is the lightest part of the picture. So on the eastern part of Utrecht, they're building something like a new hospital or a new part of the university. I normally don't shoot directly up into the sky or these very minimalistic pictures, but I think this one worked quite well. I would have loved for the smaller crane to be a little bit taller in the picture and be a little bit more present. I think the picture could have been more balanced, but overall I still think it's quite cool, and the yellow and the blue of the crane actually match really nice with the yellow of the sunlight and the blue in the sky. Afterwards, I went back to the old plan I had. Edit, 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 organize, organize, organize. And I also planned a little bit for Iceland, because my trip to Iceland was coming up and I of course didn't want to let this opportunity go to waste. But I still had to figure out the points that I really wanted to shoot and which could be really nice for photography. And this Iceland video will be coming out in approximately 1 or 2 weeks from now, so keep your eyes out for that as well. So what did I learn at the end of this week? When you haven't done something for a while and you return to it, and even though it feels natural, you do have to think about it a lot more. So what I learned is that my time planning was way too ambitious. I wanted to record a lot more videos, but I noticed that it actually was quite hard for me to do it. The main reason being that I hadn't done it in a very long time. And you just lose this, this craftiness, this automatic way of thinking and functioning to do it really fast. The same goes for editing video. I always kept editing audio and I always kept on editing pictures, but video was something I totally ignored for years. The fact that I had to take more time for things that I would do very easily in the past felt kind of bad, because you feel like you've really took a step backwards and lost things. But I do think once you find that groove again, it will go way faster. I think I could tie all this back to done is better than perfect. You just need to get out there, you need to make stuff, you need to make videos, you need to edit, you need to make mistakes. Because if you're not making at all and just reading, when you drown yourself in theory, you're not actually out there, you're not visible, and you're actually not making the mistakes that are necessary to actually improve. So I hope you liked this video, and I hope you liked this new perspective where I don't put one topic in a video, but I kind of discuss what I've been doing this past week or past few weeks. And I'm also quite interested to know what you would like to learn about photography or running a photography business. I'm not a guru, I don't know it all, but maybe we could learn it together, and by seeing me fail, you could take away a thing or two from it. I hope to see you back in the future for another video. So the Iceland video will take some time, but it will be there in the next 1 or 2 weeks. In the meantime, I will already post some pictures from Iceland and some reels from Iceland on my Instagram, so be sure to follow that through the link in the description of this video. See you next time.